Tim Walz has a very long and curious relationship with China. He first went to China after graduating university in the spring of 1989, while the Chinese armed forces were cracking down on student pro-democracy protesters in Tiananmen Square. He actually speaks in a congressional testimony that he gives years later. He said that he was at the train station in Hong Kong and people were warning him, not to go into China because they were killing all of these students in Tiananmen Square. And his response was, no, I'm going to go. I want to see what's going on. I want to engage with China. So this was the first of many trips. On that first trip, he taught high school in Guangdong province for a year. He was under the auspices of a Cambridge, Massachusetts group called World Teach, which was set up, it's a nonprofit that was set up by former Harvard students. And World Teach itself has to align itself with a Communist Party affiliated nonprofit in order to do any work in China. So, in going through a lot of documents this week, I found the nonprofit that they aligned themselves to, and it was a nonprofit that had been sanctioned by the Ministry of Security in China. So, in essence, it was something sanctioned by the Chinese government and the Chinese police. Tim Walz is so excited about China that after he gets married to his wife Gwen in 1994, they take off for their honeymoon in China. And the wedding coincides with the end of the Tiananmen Square protests, June 4th, 1994. The protests ended June 5th, 1989. He gets married June 5th, 1994. And he says that the reason he chose that date is because he wanted to remember the protests forever. I'm not sure why, but a year after they come back, after that honeymoon in China, they set up a company, a for-profit company at their home in Nebraska. At that time, they're living in Nebraska. And the company is set up to send American high school kids on exchanges to China. So part of that is paid by the high school student wanting to go to China, and the other part is paid by the Chinese government. The other element in all of this is that at some point, we don't know when, he was given a visiting fellowship at the Polytechnic University in Macau. So Macau was a Portuguese colony. It returned to China in 1999. So sometime after that, that turnover, Tim Walz is teaching international relations at this university in China. And if you go on the university's webpage, it talks about fulfilling the principles of the Chinese government under Xi Jinping, and it's very much affiliated with the Communist Party. So you have like this 30-year history of this high school teacher and National Guardsman who eventually moves from Nebraska to Minnesota, going to China. So one of the big questions that came up in the research is, did he have some kind of security clearance? And did he fill out the requisite questionnaires that you have to fill out when you're a US service member going to what is deemed an adversarial country? So in a lot of those years, China was not an adversarial country. Certainly in 1989, in the early 90s, after Tiananmen Square, it was looked upon with like great suspicion. But then in like the early aughts, everybody seemed to be going to China. But then, a few years ago, it came back to its adversarial status. So there's some leeway there, but not a lot if you're a member of the National Guard. Like, again, the big question is, how did he go? What did he tell his superiors when he came back?